So a few weeks ago, I was sitting in my usual spot at this little coffee shop I go to almost every morning, and I noticed this girl. She couldn't have been more than 22, sitting 2 tables away with a laptop covered in stickers and a notebook full of scribbled numbers. Let's call her Maya. I could tell she was working on some kind of business plan because she kept crossing things out and sighing. At some point, an older man in a very expensive-looking coat sat down near her, waiting for his coffee. Maya, being ambitious the way young people often are, worked up the courage to ask him what he did for a living. He said he was a retired investment banker. Her eyes lit up. She asked him, politely, if he had any advice for someone trying to start a business with barely any savings. And this guy, let's call him Mr. Cynical, just laughed. Not a nice laugh either. He told her that her generation wants everything overnight, that nobody wants to put in real work anymore, and that she should just get a stable job instead of chasing some fantasy. Maya tried to explain that she was already working 2 part-time jobs to save capital, that she'd been studying the market for over a year, that this wasn't some overnight fantasy to her. He wasn't interested. He told her the odds were against her, and that 99% of businesses fail, so why bother? I've built and lost and rebuilt my own wealth more times than I can count, and watching this unfold felt like watching a rerun of my own life. So I got up, walked over and joined the conversation. I told Mr. Cynical that yes, most businesses do fail, but that fear of failure is exactly what keeps most people poor their entire lives. I told him that every rich person he has ever respected also failed, repeatedly, before anything worked. I told him that discouraging young ambition isn't wisdom, it's bitterness dressed up as advice. He didn't have much to say back. Some people just aren't ready to hear it, but Maya was. We ended up talking for almost 2 hours after he left, and I gave her the same 5 principles I want to give you today, because I think there are millions of Mayas out there right now, hungry, willing, but starving for someone to actually tell them the truth instead of empty motivational quotes. So today, I'm going to give you my honest advice, no fluff, broken down into 5 principles that anyone, and I mean anyone, can use to build real wealth. Principle number 1. Stop chasing money and start sharpening your skill set. Here's something nobody tells you when you're young. The first 2 decades of your life are basically preparation, whether you realize it or not. The first is just childhood, running around, having fun, no real responsibility. The next is spent in a classroom being taught information that, let's be honest, barely applies to earning money in the real world. Nobody teaches you how taxes work, how to negotiate a salary, or how compound interest can make or break your future. You learn geometry and forget it by 25. So when you hit your 20s and see people your age flying around in private jets on social media, don't spiral into feeling like a failure. You haven't failed. You were never taught how to play this game in the first place. You're just getting started, and that's actually good news, not bad news. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes at this stage. They try to jump straight to the big money. They want to start a business, launch a brand, become an entrepreneur, without ever developing a real skill first. That's like trying to chop down a giant oak tree with a rusty, blunt axe. You can swing all day and barely make a dent, and you'll exhaust yourself in the process. Before you go chasing the big money, you need to sharpen your axe. That means mastering what's called a high-income skill, something that can realistically earn you several $1,000s a month on its own. Think copywriting, video editing, sales, coding, digital marketing, whatever fits your interests and the world's current demand. It doesn't matter which one you choose, what matters is that you go all in and actually get good at it. I've watched young people spend 6 months half learning 5 different skills and ending up mediocre at all of them. That's a losing strategy. Pick 1, maybe 2, and become genuinely excellent. Because here's the truth that most people miss. A sharp skill doesn't just earn you money, it opens doors. It gets you into rooms with people you'd otherwise never meet. It gets you introductions, mentorships, opportunities that money alone could never buy. This is not a sprint. Stop telling yourself you need to be a millionaire by 25. That pressure will push you into shortcuts, and shortcuts in this game usually end in disaster. Extend your timeline. Trust that if you build real skill first, the money becomes a natural consequence, not something you have to force. And here's a bonus nobody talks about enough. Once you've built a genuine skill, even if life knocks you down and takes everything you own, you can rebuild faster than someone starting from zero, because the knowledge stays with you. That's real security, not the money in your account, the ability sitting inside your own head. Principle number 2. Protect your money like it's the last cookie in the jar. Picture a stack of cookies sitting on your kitchen counter. The more you keep touching them, picking them up, putting them down, moving them around, the faster they crumble into nothing. Your money behaves exactly the same way. The more you fidget with it, moving it here, trying that new trend, pulling it out to buy something flashy, the faster it disappears. Most people are their own worst enemy when it comes to money, not because they're bad people, but because access breeds temptation. If your money is sitting somewhere easy to reach, you will eventually find a reason to spend it. That's just human nature. So the real secret isn't discipline in the moment, it's removing the temptation entirely by locking your money away somewhere it can quietly grow. This is exactly how people like Warren Buffett built almost all of their fortune after they turned 50. It wasn't from clever trading or lucky picks. It was from decades of compound interest working silently in the background while they left it alone. Now, locking money in a regular savings account isn't enough either, because inflation quietly eats away at it every single year. You need to put it into actual assets, things that grow in value over time. Real estate, precious metals, collectibles if that's your thing, but for most people starting out, the simplest and most accessible route is the stock market. I know what young people dream about. Flashy cars, expensive watches, showing off online. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things eventually, but here's the truth almost nobody tells you. Making $1 million is not actually that impressive on its own. Plenty of people stumble into a windfall once. What separates the wealthy from the temporarily lucky is whether they can hold on to it and grow it into something lasting. The moment money comes in, get it out of your hands and into investments as fast as possible. I made this rule for myself decades ago and I have never once broken it. To this day, I don't touch my long-term investments, no matter how tempting the market gets. Those investments alone now generate more in passive income every single week than most people make in a month at their job, and because of that, I never have to touch the money I actively earn. Here's something interesting though. Once I committed to never touching my invested money, it actually lit a fire under me instead of making me complacent. I still felt like I had nothing extra, so I kept hustling, kept building, kept growing. There's an old saying about how the boxer training in a rundown, beaten-up gym often ends up beating the boxer who trains in a fancy, state-of-the-art facility, because scarcity breeds hunger and comfort breeds laziness. If you want to start investing today, don't obsess over the exact dollar amount. Set a percentage of your income instead, something you commit to no matter what you're earning. As a simple example, if you invested just a couple $100s a month into a low-cost index fund and earned an average annual return of around 10%, you would be sitting on over $1 million within about 40 years. That's not some fantasy number, that's just how compounding actually works when you leave it alone. Markets go up and down, nobody can promise you certainty, but historically, broad index funds have delivered strong long-term returns decade after decade. The specific investment matters less than your consistency. Pick something reasonable, and then stay boring and consistent for a very long time. Boring is what makes people rich. Exciting is usually what makes people broke. Principle number 3. Stop fearing failure, and start fearing regret instead. If I asked you what's stopping you from taking a real risk in life, you'd probably say you're afraid of failing. But if we're being completely honest with each other, that's usually not the real fear. The real fear is what other people will think of you if you fail. It's the embarrassment, the whispers, the imagined judgment from family, friends, and strangers on the internet. I've spoken to countless young people just like Maya from the coffee shop, people bursting with ideas and ambition, who stay completely frozen because they're terrified of looking foolish in front of others. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you keep doing exactly what everyone else around you is doing, you will keep getting exactly the results everyone else around you is getting. Average effort produces average outcomes. There is no way around that. Taking calculated risks isn't reckless. It's actually the only realistic path to getting ahead of the crowd. And here's the good news if you're young. You have the one resource that money cannot buy you back once it's gone. Time. Time to recover, time to try again, time to fail forward. I remember exactly how terrified I felt when I considered walking away from a stable job because my manager made my life miserable every single day. It felt like jumping off a cliff with no idea what was waiting below. I took the leap anyway, and it turned out to be the single best decision of my entire life. If fear had won that day, I genuinely don't know where I'd be right now, but it certainly wouldn't be here. This same logic applies directly to how you invest, by the way. When you're young, you don't need to be parking your money in ultra-safe assets like bonds or gold the way older investors do. Those are defensive plays for people protecting wealth they've already built, people who no longer have decades to recover from a downturn. You, on the other hand, have time on your side, which means you can afford to take on more risk in pursuit of greater long-term growth. Here's what I want you to really sit with. Not taking chances doesn't protect you from pain, it just delays it and disguises it as regret instead. 10 years from now, a failed attempt will just be a story you tell at dinner parties. But an opportunity you were too scared to even try will follow you around as a quiet what-if for the rest of your life. That kind of regret is far heavier than any failure could ever be. As you get older, your appetite and ability to take risks naturally shrinks, responsibilities pile up, safety nets get smaller, energy levels change. So use these years while you still have them. Every successful person you admire, every single one, has a long trail of failures behind their success. You genuinely cannot have one without the other. They are two sides of the exact same coin. Failure is simply the tuition you pay for the education that eventually leads to success. Principle number 4. Never let yourself believe you know enough. There's a concept called the Dunning-Kruger curve, and it explains something fascinating about human confidence. When you first learn a little about something, your confidence shoots up almost instantly, way higher than your actual knowledge deserves. People get stuck right there, at what's sometimes called the peak of a mountain built entirely on false confidence, and most people never climb back down from it to build real, humble expertise. This isn't because people are lazy or unintelligent, it's because arrogance quietly disguises itself as knowledge. A huge number of people believe getting rich comes down to pure luck or some secret only a select few are born knowing. In reality, it is a learnable skill, exactly like playing an instrument or speaking a new language. It requires ongoing practice, constant correction, and a genuine willingness to keep learning, long after you think you already know enough. Even at this stage of my life, having built and rebuilt wealth more than once, I still spend time every single week learning about what's currently happening in the world. I read financial news, I watch what younger creators are talking about, I pay attention to shifting trends long before most people my age even notice them. That habit alone has let me spot opportunities years ahead of my peers. Stay a student for as long as you possibly can, not in the traditional classroom sense, but in the sense of constantly extracting lessons from people who are further along the path than you are. This is not something you can rush. You have to genuinely earn your understanding over time. There are no real shortcuts to wisdom, only shortcuts to the illusion of it. Whenever I meet someone new these days, I make it a personal habit to walk away having learned at least one thing I didn't know before we spoke. It keeps me humble, because the truth is, no matter how much you've built or how much you know, you never actually reach a point where you know everything. Anyone who tells you otherwise is usually the person closest to losing it all. Unfortunately, we're raised with the opposite mindset here. Go to school until you're around 18, spend a few more years at university, and then the unspoken message is that your learning is basically done. That mindset is completely broken in a world that changes faster with every single year that passes. If you want to keep up, you have to keep updating your own understanding constantly, the exact same way software needs regular updates or it eventually stops working properly. If you stop learning, you don't just plateau, you actually start falling behind, because everyone else keeps moving forward while you stand still. I genuinely believe that if I hadn't kept this mindset when I was younger, I would not be anywhere close to where I am today. The habit of staying curious is, quietly, one of the most profitable habits a person can build. Principle number 5. Surround yourself with people who are already where you want to be. If you want to become the first person in your family to build real wealth, you eventually have to break a cycle that's likely been repeating for generations. Research has consistently shown something surprising about wealth building. And it isn't about working harder in isolation, it's about who you spend your time around. Studies on financial behavior have found that people surrounded by financially successful friends are significantly more likely to start investing and consistently more likely to save money, compared to people whose social circles rarely discuss money at all. When I post content explaining basic investing concepts, I'm always amazed by how many comments say something like, "If it's really this simple, why isn't everyone already doing it?" The honest answer is that most people are being quietly held back by the circle of influence around them, not by a lack of intelligence. People hesitate to invest, hesitate to start side projects, hesitate to take any kind of financial risk, largely because nobody in their immediate world is doing it either, so it feels foreign and risky. But the moment you start surrounding yourself with people who are already comfortable talking about money, investing, and building businesses, something shifts. Concepts that once felt intimidating start getting explained to you in plain, simple language, and suddenly the whole idea of building wealth feels achievable instead of mysterious. I'm not telling you to abandon your current friendships or to start befriending people purely because they have money. That's a shallow and honestly pretty transparent strategy that rarely works out well anyway. What I am suggesting is that you deliberately put yourself in spaces where financially successful, driven people naturally spend their time, whether that's certain communities, clubs, courses, or events. The friendships that form there will happen naturally, and the influence will rub off on you without you even trying. If you've made it this far into this video, I already have a good feeling about you. You're clearly young, ambitious, hungry, and genuinely willing to learn, which puts you ahead of most people your age without you even realizing it yet. I have an enormous amount of respect for young people like you, honestly, more than you probably realize. It doesn't matter what country you're watching this from right now, whether you're in the United States, the United Kingdom, somewhere across Africa, Asia, or anywhere else on this planet. Your generation is the backbone of whatever comes next in this world. Without your energy, your ideas, and your willingness to take risks that older generations have grown too comfortable to take, everything eventually grinds to a halt. One day, people from my generation will step aside, whether we like it or not, and it will be entirely up to you to carry things forward. So please, don't let fear, judgment, or some bitter older person talking down to you convince you that your ambition is unrealistic or foolish. And know this, there are still people from my generation, myself included, who genuinely respect and root for you, and who will always speak up for you when somebody tries to tear your ambitions down. If this video actually helped you see things a little differently today, do me a favor and subscribe, because I've got plenty more honest advice like this coming your way, and I would genuinely love to help you build the kind of future you're dreaming about right now.